Hello, everyone. Hello. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Island Sailing Club and welcome to the Raymarine weather briefing. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Rod Nichols. I'm the Commodore, but more importantly, I'm the Principal Race Officer for the Rainy Island race, and this is my 8th year. So if you've got any complaints about previous races, then just see me afterwards. This is the 76th year since we started running it in 1931. And it's the 10th year that Raymarine has provided this valuable contribution to the race. So thank you, Raymarine, for your support and everything that you do as a race partner. If you've been on the JP Morgan Asset Management website in the last few days, you'll see that Raymarine weather preview, which is given by the meteorologist, got that word out right, Chris Tibbs. Chris Tibbs this year is giving all our information as to what the weather is all about. I'm pretty certain he's going to give us some good news. Chris Tibbs.
Thank you very much. Well, good evening. I'm Chris Tibbs. I'm a meteorologist and a sailor, and I have been around the island a few times, but unfortunately I'm not going tomorrow. Unfortunately, because it does seem quite a nice weather patterns developed. We got an area of high pressure. It's part of the Azores High. It's down to the southwest of the UK, and we've got low pressure over the continent, and that's giving us a fairly northerly airstream. It's a bit unusual this year to be able to say that there should be a lot of sunshine tomorrow. Yeah, probably, yeah. Probably everybody end up getting suntan because we're not used to it. But there's a very weak weather front that's very slowly going across the UK. It won't really affect the weather in that it's not bringing rain, but it is expected to strengthen the wind a little bit overnight. So this is the situation expected for tomorrow morning, with the high pressure down to the southwest, low over Germany and further east, and so we're getting this northerly airflow across the UK. So I'm expecting a lot of coloured sails at the start. It's been a bit windy the last few years, but this was a picture taken a few years ago. So early tomorrow morning, and I know it is an early start for, well, I think it's an early start for everybody. There will be a light to moderate flow over the Solent. I'm thinking that it'll be probably about 10 to 15 knots. So in forces, that's a force 3 into a force 4. So it'll be quite a nice breeze to start with. It'll be quite banded though, because where you are in relationship to the land will make a big difference. So there will be bands going as you go west down the Solent. You'll find stronger pressure and then less pressure. There might be a little bit of mist around first thing in the morning, but that should very quickly clear. So I put some grid files which I downloaded earlier, and this is for 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. We can see here that mainly in the central Solent it's showing around about on the grid files 10 knots. Grid files, like all weather forecasts, are for a 10-metre height. So if you're sailing round on Leopard with a mast that is somewhere up near the ionosphere, you tend to get stronger wind than if you're going round on an X-boat. So grid files generally underestimate the wind speed a little bit, and it's showing for 9 o'clock, central Solent 10 to 15 knots, and round on the western side of the Solent a little bit more. It's showing 15 knots, so you probably expect 13 to 18 at that stage. So quite a nice breeze, and fairly solidly from the north. I know there's often a lot of saying in the Solent that if the wind's in the north, go north to try and get the little extra bullets of wind speed coming down the Bewley River, down Lymington and off the New Forest. So as we go through the day tomorrow, by midday there will be a general slowing down of the wind. So it looks like the big boats will have the strongest wind for the longest period of time. But we're still looking round about 10 knots of wind. So 10 knots is the top end of a force 3. So we're looking at 10 knots, but it is generally easing during the day. Then as we move to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we're seeing that the wind is dropping generally everywhere. It's got quite a bit to do with the fact that the land's heating up. I don't think we'll get a proper sea breeze, but it is helping. The heating of the land is tending to lower the wind speed, and the isobars are a little bit further apart. So we are expecting the wind to start dropping early afternoon, but staying mainly from a north to northwesterly direction. It is going to make it quite difficult if you're along the south side of the Isle of Wight, because the friction of the land the wind coming over the land will tend to slow the air down, so it might be a little bit light in the wind shadows along the south coast. And going into the evening, hopefully by this time 1800 you'll be back in the bar here, having had a wonderful time, but we are still seeing fairly light wind conditions of around about 5 knots. So hopefully, if you are still out there, the tide will be changing and helping to bring you home. So talking of the tides are going to be important tomorrow. Different publications give slightly different times of high water. It's just about at 0600 tomorrow morning is high water in the Solent here. Some books say a little bit before, others a little bit after. And the range is around about 3 metres. So not quite springs, but not quite neaps either. Early tomorrow morning, this is for 0900, I think. Sorry, this is 0600. We can see on here with the arrows that the tide is all flowing down to the west. We are looking at a balance here between perhaps staying south to be in the maximum tide, or potentially more wind just to the north. So a little bit of a balance there to choose between going for tide or going for wind speed. A lot will depend on your boat and the sails that you have. But I'm fairly confident, I'll take that to, I'm very confident that it won't be beating along Cowes Green and worrying about whether you're going to find a lane to come out on port or not. It should be a little bit more straightforward than that. There has been an addition this year, and I think it's the first year that it's been, but there is an exclusion zone amongst the moorings at Yarmouth. So do check your sailing instructions, because it'd be a shame to get penalised before you're out the Solent. So there is an area off Yarmouth where you're not allowed to go in. As the tide continues to take you down the Needles Channel, we will get to the point where do we go inside the wreck or do we go outside of the wreck? If we've got a northerly or a northwesterly wind, it does make it quite a narrow approach to go inside of the wreck. So my suggestion would be that, and it would be something I'd be doing if I was racing this year, I'd come round the outside. 2 reasons. One, if everybody's piling in with spinnakers, maybe port and starboard instances, but it is going to be quite tricky to line it up with the tide underneath you. It also has the additional problem that if one boat hits the rock, there's not very much places for you to go if you're coming in too close behind them. So I'd suggest going round the outside. I am also concerned that with the wind being from the north and the northwest, as you get round, if you cut in tightly after you've been close, either inside or outside the wreck, if you tuck in quite tightly, you get underneath the cliffs. And I would expect that under the cliffs here, you will have a fairly large area of wind shadow. The wind shadow will be quite interesting because where you are under the cliffs under Tennyson Down, the cliffs are very sharp, and that's where you'll most likely to get the biggest wind shadow. As you move further east, it's more downland. It's much more gentle, the slope down to the sea. So I'm hoping that the wind shadow won't be too bad there. St Catherine's is always quite an interesting place because it is very tidal. I believe the tide changes there about 11:30 tomorrow morning. So there will be a difference whether you've arrived there before the tides turn or after the tides turned. It's probably quite difficult at the back to see, but the difference between those two slides were the little tidal arrows had changed direction. You'll have to believe me if you can't see that. It's a bit too far away to see. Also, by St Catherine's, even when there isn't a lot of wind, you often get rather a tide rip. And this was taken a few years ago when we were doing some filming around the back of the island, and we were really surprised at just how much how many white horses and how much broken water there was, even though the wind wasn't very strong. So something to consider when you're approaching St Catherine's, whether you want to be too close in because of the wind shadow, but there again you don't want to go right the way through the middle of the tide rip. So some interesting questions that you're going to be asking the navigator as you approach there. As we carry on around the island, the next place where the tide becomes quite significant is as you're coming around Bembridge Ledge, because often you come into the Bembridge Ledge with the tide underneath you, only to find that as you come round the corner, the tide is coming out of the Solent. So that could be quite an interesting place again tomorrow. Come round quite a hard left-hand turn. And then we have as well got another exclusion zone off Seaview to keep away from the moored boats and any small craft that are there. So it is going to be interesting. It'll be a beat coming up in fairly light winds, I think, at this stage. So whether you're going inside to cheat the tide or offshore to try and gain a little bit more wind, it will make it for an interesting beat up there. The forts, or No Man's Land Fort, isn't included in the sailing instructions this year, so you have a choice of going either side of it. But do take care, there will be a big wind shadow in the lee of the fort. And Ryde Sand. I think I can quite confidently say that there'll be at least one boat spending longer there than they mean. It's quite a big area of shallow water, and on here you can see out here is the fort, and there are the posts. And when we go round in our boat, my wife does the navigation, and I can't always hear what she's saying, but by the tone of her voice, I know when I have to tack. So far, she's kept me from actually touching the bottom there, but other people haven't been quite so lucky. So do take care with Ryde Sand, and I'm sure somebody will be buying everybody else a drink because they've gone on it tomorrow. Coming back up the Eastern Solent, I think we'll find that the wind, if we're a little bit late in the afternoon, the wind will be quite light, probably around about 5-6 knots, something like that. So force 2, maybe force 3. And I think we'll probably find slightly stronger wind over on the mainland shore than there will be over on the island shore. It's a little bit further and you've probably got to cross the tide twice to get there, but it might be worthwhile, at least worthwhile considering it, So I think this area, Osborne Bay area, will be quite light for wind, and we don't really want to start kedging at this stage of the race. This was on a slightly different weather model and a lower resolution weather model. So although it's showing 10 knots of wind, I don't think it actually will be 10 knots of wind. I think that's late afternoon. I think it was about 5 o'clock. And then there's the finish. Please read your sailing instructions. I know when we've been racing, it's that awful feeling as you come round the corner and it's like, which line are we meant to be going through? So have a read of the sailing instructions. As a general consideration, there's a lot of boats out there tomorrow. Do keep an eye out for the big ships as well, because sometimes we get so focused on the boats next to us, we don't notice the Queen Mary coming up behind us. And do try and avoid close calls and make it to the correct line. So just to recap, looking at north to northwesterly wind, mainly force 3 to 4 at the start, and you should hold that for most of the morning, beginning to get a little bit light during the afternoon, dropping to a force 2 to 3. I think there will be some significant areas of wind shadow, particularly under the cliffs on the south side of the island. And just on a pleasant note, it should be warm and sunny. Hey. So have a great day. It should be Spinnakers for a lot of the way, and I think we've got a little time for questions. If there's any. No, all ready to go to the bar. So I'll leave it to you, Rod, to finish off.
Thank you very much, Chris. If everybody follows what Chris has said, you're all going to be in the same point. It's not for me to tell you how to go around the island, but yeah, when you get to the Needles, there's no advantage at all going inside the wreck. So keep outside the wreck. And Ryde Sands. I was down in Ryde a couple of weeks ago. The sands are quite some way out this year compared to last year. So if you think you knew where you were last year, be careful. Just one thing in the morning, notice the mariners, there's no shipping movements during our start sequence. We're told that there are at least 3, maybe 4 cruise ships will go in before our start. So maybe some of the yachts coming out of Hamble very early in the morning might meet a few cruise ships going up to Southampton. But there would be 2, possibly 2, maybe 3, that won't quite make it in the morning. And they will be hovering round to the east. In theory, that should not affect the start sequence. But we do know what happened in 2006. The fact that there'll be 5 or 6 cruise ships in Southampton tomorrow, they will be turned around and going out to the east in the afternoon. So if you think you missed them in the morning, be careful coming back late in the afternoon, because they'll all be going in the opposite direction to you. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, Raymarine, for their weather briefing. And I hope you all have a good day tomorrow and a safe journey around the island. Thanks very much.